Included with the new Preds is a very cool box. You can see black on black with the Predator logo there on the top, and it's got a magnetic flap on the front. And when you open it up and slide this open, it kind of... What's going on, guys? Josh from SoccerReviewsForYou.com, and as you know, the Predator is back. This is it, the latest and greatest, the Predator 18 Plus in the launch Skystalker pack colorway. Really good colorway, very Predator-esque, I would say, but obviously very different than what we've seen in the past from the Predator line. So in today's video, we're gonna go over all the details, the tech specs, the weight, the fit and feel on feet, everything you need to know, and really determine, is the new Predator as good as we all hoped it would be? So if you want to learn more, stick around and watch the entire video. And if you're interested in a pair for yourself, I'll leave a little pop-up on screen, or you can click the first link down below. That'll take you to the review page on my website, where you'll find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes, where you'll be able to pick these up below their normal $300 retail price. The cleats come with a couple different extras, including a box that acts as somewhat of a display case. Really interesting design there. They also come with the typical black perforated mesh string bag with the Predator logo there on the front. You also get a shoehorn, as we used to get with the Pure Controls, mainly because the shoe is laceless, although this shoehorn is about twice the size as the old one. It's to help put the shoes on if you need that help. Personally, I don't use it. Plus, you get an extra set of regular foam insoles to go along with the Boost insoles already included inside the shoes. Before we get into the specifics of the Predator 18 Plus, I want to give a very strong opinion, because I know people are pumped about the Predator making a comeback, but if you ask me my honest opinion, and leave your opinions on this down below in the comments, is the new Predator 18 Plus and the new Predator line in general a true return of the Predator? In my opinion, no, it isn't. This is more so just a continuation of what we were getting from the Ace line, but now bearing the Predator name. If you think about Predator, a lot of people think of this shoe right here, the Adidas Predator Mania, and there were models before and after this particular shoe that a lot of people really liked as well. A defining characteristic of the Predator has always been the leather upper, specifically kangaroo leather, and of course the rubberized striking element. Some people think the tongue is really a big deal, some people think the stud pattern is a big deal as well, but I would say the rubber striking element as a whole is really what makes a Predator a Predator. And as we saw in the later years, as the line evolved with the Predator Instinct, we didn't get the leather anymore, but we still got those rubber elements. That was a major part of the performance characteristics of this particular shoe. With the return of the Predator in the form of the 18 Plus, there's no rubber, there's no stud pattern, there's no flap tongue, there aren't even any laces. This is, like I said, a continuation of the Ace, specifically the Pure Control, which is no more. Now it's the Predator 18 Plus. Not saying that you shouldn't be excited about it, but if you were planning on getting the new Predator from Adidas because you thought it was going to be like the old Predators, unfortunately, that is not the case here. With that out of the way, let's break down every element of the Predator 18 Plus. Prime knit, forge knit, and control skin are the three elements, materials / technologies that make up the upper of the Predator 18 Plus. And again, the big thing to note here is that this is an evolution of what we got from the Ace 16 Plus and 17 Plus Pure Control models, basically the third Pure Control, if you want to call it that. The big thing here, though, is the fact that it does look like the upper is entirely made out of the same type of material all the way through, a one-piece construction, if you will, but that's not actually the case. You have the prime knit at the toe, you have forge knit through the middle, you have prime knit through the lacing system, and you have control skin over top of all that, which is creating the texturing. The very first thing that I noticed as soon as I held the shoes in my hand, and especially when I put them on for the first time, is that this upper feels so much softer, so much more flexible, so much more natural than what we got from the first two Pure Controls, where while those were knitted based uppers, there was so much reinforcement, so much plastic type material to maintain the structure of the shoe. It had just a very rigid and stiff sensation on foot, which I personally was not a big fan of. This feels much softer, much better against your foot, and because of that, it offers a much nicer touch as well. As far as the thickness of the material is concerned, obviously it has this ridge texturing on the surface. That is not 3D texturing, kind of like what we see from the Flyknit upper on the Magista Obra 2, where the texturing is actually on the inside and the outside. If you feel around on the inside of the shoe, it has a padded liner that is completely smooth. So all this texturing is just the control skin added layer on the surface of a prime knit base for this particular upper. The texturing itself, it's fairly significant, as you guys can see. When you run your finger along it, it's very, very noticeable. And obviously it extends through the entire forefoot and partially through the midfoot as well. But as far as its impact on the overall touch, it adds a little bit of thickness to the upper, which makes it feel slightly more padded. But in terms of being like a rubberized striking element, as we've seen from Predators in the past, providing extra grip on the ball, either when shooting or dribbling, that's not really the case. You don't feel the texturing on the ball, in my opinion. You may notice it at first just because it's a new material and it'll kind of feel a little bit sticky, but as you wear them in, that's something that is just gonna completely go away. And for the most part, again, there's no added grip from this upper. The texturing, I would say, is more so just to add thickness and kind of a visual thing. And I have to say, it does look very, very cool. Now, it also looks like the upper is entirely one piece. That's not actually the case, which you can also find when you feel around on the inside through the padded liner. You obviously will see the stitch that is kind of welded over top of right here, where it does transition to this elasticated prime knit material. But basically there's a segmentation from the forefoot, or from the forefoot forward, that is a straight up prime knit material. And then through the midfoot, you're gonna find what's called forge knit, which is new from Adidas. We've never seen it in their soccer line at all. And basically it's prime knit that's more heavily reinforced. That negates the need for any kind of stiff structure element on the lateral or medial side of the shoe. So instead of having that plastic Adidas stripe kind of added on top of the upper, like we saw from the first two Pure Controls, this doesn't have that. And again, that's super, super noticeable when you put these on for the first time. And really the first thing that it reminded me of was another Adidas product, the Nemesis 17 Plus 360 Agility, that also doesn't have any kind of stiff reinforcement internally or externally. So that's something that is a positive thing from a comfort standpoint, but in terms of overall lockdown and responsiveness, it doesn't feel quite as secure through the midfoot as what we got from the previous generation Ace 17 Plus Pure Control, in my opinion. Moving on to the Laceless system. This, of course, being the first ever Laceless Predator, and really taking some elements from previous generation Pure Controls, but also a lot from the Nemesis 17 Plus 360 Agility, also a laceless boot. So unlike previous Pure Controls, you don't have that reinforced element on the side, the plastic piece where you'd have the Adidas stripes. That is immediately noticeable when you put these on, because the midfoot just doesn't feel quite as stiff or rigid as any of the Pure Control models did, especially when you put them on for the first time. They really felt stiff out of the box. You don't get that here, which is a good thing from a comfort standpoint, and in that regard, it did remind me a lot of what you get from the Nemesis 17 Plus. Another thing that's distinctively different here is that this doesn't have any kind of internal wrapping of your foot. All of the Pure Controls, the 16 Plus and the 17 Plus, had an internal tech fit system, either made from synthetic or from prime knit. This doesn't have that. What you see is what you get. So you have this elasticated prime knit material through the middle, but as you can see, there's a lot less of it than what we saw from the 16 Plus Pure Control, which also had this exposed prime knit across the top. But because it is narrower, that means that it's not going to be able to stretch quite as much, which is a good thing in regards to lockdown, but it still needs to stretch in order to be able to get your foot in and out of the cleats. The thing about this stretchy aspect across the top, which is obviously a very important aspect of the upper in order to maintain proper lockdown, is while it's going to be under tension when the shoes are on your feet, upon more intense movements, a quick cut, a change of direction, a plant for a strike, it's still going to be able to stretch that little bit more, which means that your foot isn't entirely locked down as it would be if you had laces that were tied tight with a knot at the top, not being able to move. And I must say, while this forged knit material on the side does work quite well, it's again, not quite as solid, not quite as effective in terms of securing your foot and locking it in place. Also, because you only have this little bit of prime knit securing your foot inside of the shoe, the heel slippage, while not a big deal, you will notice that there is still that constant pressure at the back of your heel because your heel does want to move. It's not being pushed into the base of the sole as tightly as it would be with a shoe that has a lacing system. So that is something to keep in mind. Also, because of the fact that this is laceless, means that you don't have adjustability. So when you put them on, that's the way that they fit. You can't make them tighter, you can't make them looser. So depending on the shape and specific size of your foot, these shoes might fit you really well, they might not fit you so great. So if you do plan on ordering these online, or even if you're trying them on at a store, really use your judgment. If they don't fit you well, it's probably not a good idea because again, there is no way to adjust this system. I'm personally not a huge fan of laceless boots in general, and I really don't have a different opinion because of this new laceless design. It works okay. It's effective in terms of holding your foot inside of the shoe without them falling off. but is it the most effective system in terms of just outright performance? Not necessarily. I really do look forward to trying out the 18.1 variation, which pretty much features the exact same upper, all the same elements, but with a lacing system. I think you can expect those to have much better lockdown overall. Moving on to the collar, this features their sock fit system, that's what they're calling it, and it's all made from elasticated prime knit that flows pretty much seamlessly from the central part of the Laceless system, which looks quite good, although this collar has pretty much nothing to do with the lockdown, no ankle support. It's really there more so as a cosmetic thing, and I have to say, I think it actually looks quite cool. Lower at the front, higher at the back. It's got this nice kind of slim taper to it. So for the most part, it'll fit most people's ankle quite tightly. Again, even though it has nothing to do with the actual lockdown and fit of the shoe, it extends down the side, and it is cool that as it stretches out, it reveals that little bit of orange. So that's something you know Adidas is gonna play around with from colorway to colorway. You also notice that the back of the shoe has a lot more of a softer construction to it than what we've seen from previous generation Pure Controls, which felt quite stiff. That is noticeable when you put them on for the first time. And you'll also notice that this new control frame, more on it in just a second, does feature somewhat of a heel counter. It's almost like what we have on the sprint frame of the 17 Plus Pure Control, but kind of cut in half. So it's more so just at the lower portion of the heel, mainly just to allow for proper containment, not having your heel slide from side to side, which is obviously something that you don't want happening. Internally, you can see the collar is orange. It's got the Predator branding right there, which is really nice. This is all rubberized on the inside if you're wondering, but again, for the most part, it's not firm at the back like what we saw on the 17 Plus Pure Control and the 16 Plus to a certain extent. And then the heel liner, very heavily padded, a nice synthetic suede material. Again, not too far off from previous Pure Control models, even though this technically isn't a Pure Control. The insole is of course fully removable, and it is an exact carryover as to what we got from the Ace 17 Plus Pure Control. Synthetic suede on top, some little cutouts there at the heel, more so for the sake of cosmetics, and it's made from a single layer of their Boost material. But because it is so thin, honestly, there's not a whole lot of cushioning provided by this insole. I would say it's even less cushioned than the average foam insole just because it is thinner. And even if you just take your fingers, your thumb and your finger, and kind of squish the insole, there's not much movement there. There's not a lot of padding. It's just too thin to provide that underfoot cushioning that I think a lot of people would expect from a material as good as Boost. Another thing that's different in comparison to the Pure Control is the fact that the underside of the outsole isn't fully lined in Boost like we saw on the previous 17 Plus Pure Control. The only place you'll find Boost is basically from the halfway point forward. The heel area doesn't feature any extra boost on the base of the outsole at all. So that's interesting. But again, for the most part, the insole feels like a regular insole, regardless of what material that it's made out of. And if you don't like the Boost insole, they do include the extra ones in the box, as you saw at the start of the video. Finally, we have the sole plate and stud pattern, with the sole plate being called the control frame, which we did also see as the name of the sole plate for the Predator Instinct, even though this is something that I would say is a fair bit different. So it's not a sprint frame like we saw on the previous Pure Control models, but it's more so just kind of a variation of that. I will say that the plastic material is thicker. It's very, very flexible in the forefoot, which is nice and noticeable when you put them on, but the midfoot and heel area is super, super rigid and structured. You can see it's got this very thick spine, kind of creating this Y shape through the middle. It's got spines down the sides as well. It's very heavily reinforced, and it gives the shoe a nice solid feel, which I think is fitting of the Predator name. And you also notice the heel counter, like I talked about a little bit earlier. I love the fact that it has the embossed Predator right there at the very back. And overall, I like the sole plate itself, even though it does impact the weight of the shoe, which we'll talk about in just a second. The stud pattern, on the other hand, is pretty much typical Adidas. It's the same layout of the studs that we see from pretty much every single line from the brand at the moment, with the main difference being that the studs themselves have their own unique shape specific to this Predator model. So they've got kind of like this four-sided, kind of slightly bladed style stud, but also kind of a conical style stud. For the most part, the traction, the feel, the performance, it's the same across the board, regardless of which line you buy from Adidas. They've been using it for years. We also had this exact same layout on the Predator Instinct as well. So I'm not too surprised. Would have loved to have seen something different, but this definitely does get the job done. And as far as I know, given that it's the same layout, I think this is also FG-AG like the other lines from Adidas, because so you can safely use this on both firm natural grass and artificial grass playing surfaces. When you think Predator, you probably don't think lightweight, even though they tried to do that with the Adi Power, the LZ1, and the LZ2 to a certain extent. But this shoe in a size 9 US, the new Predator 18 Plus, weighs in at 8.6 ounces, which is more than I was expecting them to weigh. For comparison's sake, an A17 Plus Pure Control weighs in at 8.1 ounces, so these are half an ounce more than that, which again is a little bit surprising. And in comparison to other top-end models from the Adidas brand, and really other brands out there in general, 8.6 ounces is on the heavier side of things, even though it's not necessarily gonna feel heavy on your feet. Most top-end models in 2017 weigh in at around the 7-ounce mark. So if you want that lighter feel, maybe this isn't the best option for you. But if you want something that does feel more solid and I guess structurally sound underfoot because of this new control frame sole plate, which is where I think the extra weight is coming from, then you won't mind the weight of the Predator 18 Plus. As far as the look is concerned, surprisingly, I actually like these a lot more than I was expecting to. They look really, really good in person. To me, my favorite part is the ridge texturing you have on the upper. It does, to a certain extent, give it that Predator vibe, even though these are drastically different looking than any Predator models before it. The Adidas stripes on this particular colorway are actually reflective, but pretty much just look white when it's just normal lighting type environment. The Laceless system, I think, flows really nicely with the rest of the shoe, which we didn't necessarily get with the original Pure Control. That's something that I wasn't a huge fan of with the exposed prime knit, but it actually looks okay on this colorway. I love the fact that it has the Predator logo embossed on the back of the heel. The little touch and detail on the inside is nice as well. And as far as the colorway is concerned, this being the launch Skystalker pack colorway, it looks quite good. It's not quite black, white, and red, the traditional colors we'd expect to see a Predator launch in, but I'm sure we'll get that at some point in time. And really the black and white with the hit of this copper around the heel area, overall, I think it looks quite good. So to my surprise, I think they're pretty attractive shoes, but let me know your opinions down below in the comments. So because these are laceless, how do you actually get them on? Well, this front part is elasticated, that's gonna stretch, and then they put this little rubber bit at the back which doesn't stretch, so you have something to grab onto when you're putting them on. What I like to do is use one hand to grab the back piece, use the other hand to grab the front piece, kind of pull this opening up like this, and then just slide my foot in as easily as I can, kind of supporting the back so I'm not stepping on the heel too much, and then just slide it in. From there, all you really do is adjust the sides of the collar, and that's pretty much it. The shoes are on and ready to go. On feet, there's a couple things that I immediately notice about the Predator 18 Plus. Again, comparing to previous generation Pure Controls, this basically being the third generation of that lineup, these don't feel nearly as stiff, both in regards to the upper in the toe box forefoot area, as well as the midfoot. You don't have those plastic reinforcement pieces, and the forged knit in general just feels pretty similar to the prime knit that you have at the front of the shoe. The other big difference here is that my foot honestly does not feel as secure as did in previous Pure Control models, both in terms of the midfoot lockdown, the stability, as well as heel lockdown. My heel's not necessarily slipping, but it can move slightly off the base of the sole plate as soon as I lift a little bit, and that's a little bit concerning considering that I'm not even really moving around yet. I'm just kind of standing in place and lifting myself up on my toes. So again, if lockdown and having a nice, tight, secure fit is something that you're really, really after and you prioritize with a top-end soccer cleat or soccer cleats in general, this model in particular, and really I think laceless boots in general, probably not a great option for you. But if you've worn laceless stuff in the past and you liked it, you're probably not gonna have too many issues here. Although I would say that the lockdown is not as good as previous generation Pure Controls provided. As far as the comfort and general width of the shoe is concerned, they're very, very comfortable. There's nothing about them that I dislike the feel of on feet. It's just that fit and lockdown that is a major concern, especially considering these are $300. For that money, you can get the best of the best in terms of lockdown and responsiveness. This just isn't that particular shoe. Now, as far as the width is concerned, it's got a decent amount of width to it. The overall shape, I wouldn't say is too far off from the previous generation Pure Controls. It's just slightly wider in the midfoot because it doesn't have that stiff material. So the width hasn't really changed. The material just expands more easily around your foot. So again, from a comfort standpoint, they're definitely more comfortable than previous generation Pure Controls were. you're just not as locked down anymore. And as far as the sizing goes, I'm wearing my usual size 9 US here, and the fit and the length is absolutely perfect. So if you are looking to order a pair for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. So to sum up the Predator 18 Plus, I have to say that I like it more than I was expecting to like it. The fact that it is a laceless boot, it still maintains all the flaws of previous laceless boots that I've worn from the Adidas brand. So in that regard, I don't think this is the best performing product that you can buy. I'm really excited to try out the 18.1 variation of this shoe, which is not only $75 cheaper, but it looks to be pretty much the exact same upper with a lacing system, which is gonna make a big difference in terms of overall responsiveness and lockdown. So if ultimate lockdown is what you're after, that 18.1 model is probably what you want. But if you're a fan of the laceless design, you don't mind spending the extra money, and it's just something that you really, really want, you're a fan of the Pure Controls and you want the next logical evolution of that product, I think they did a pretty good job with the Predator 18 Plus. The upper feels really, really good. Again, the fit is a little bit of a letdown, but I was kind of expecting that because of the laceless system. The quality of the fit's really gonna vary from person to person due to the lack of adjustability. The sole plate, I think, feels nice and solid. The stud pattern, same old from Adidas. The weight, not super, super light, but as a package, if this was the 3rd generation Pure Control, now called the Predator, I think it's the best Pure Control that they've ever made. That's it for me. Again, if you're interested to pair for yourself, you can click the first link down below. That'll take you to the review page on my website, where you'll find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes, where you'll be able to pick these up below their normal $300 retail price. If you enjoyed the video, found it helpful and informative, be sure to support it with a like. Any questions, as always, leave them down below in the comments, and I'll do my best to get an answer out to you as soon as I possibly can. If you aren't subscribed already, be sure to hit that subscribe button for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. All my social media information linked in the description as well. And other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. And as always, thanks for watching.